The time is now 5:02, and we are calling the City Finance Committee to order.
Look at that.
Look at that. Hello, everyone. The Finance Committee has been called to order. If we could kindly take your conversations out back if you need to continue. Thank you. Need a motion for acceptance of the committee meeting on January 13th.
Move favorable action.
Second.
We have a motion. We have a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you. First item on the agenda, which is bid package PCR 2125, is the purchase of commercial and industrial equipment and supplies. Yeah, when we get to that, right?
Yeah, we already did. We did these minutes. We did these minutes. Then you went to this.
Yep.
And now we're at these minutes.
Yeah.
You're welcome.
Okay, and we also need acceptance of the minutes of the meeting held on January 13th.
Move favorable action.
Second.
We have a motion, we have a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you. Okay, we will start off with bid number 2025-347, purchase of commercial and industrial equipment and supplies. Well, hi, Christy.
Good evening.
How are you?
I'm
Welcome
well,
back.
thank you.
Good. Go ahead, you have the floor. Just identify yourself for the record, please.
Christy Moretti, Public Works. Public Works is requesting to piggyback state MPA 348 for facilities, MRO, and industrial equipment in the amount of $60,000 for a 2-year period, expiring December 31st, 2026.
Christy, when did the previous contract expire?
December 31st.
Okay. And when did the state award this bid?
The state issued this on January 1st. So getting it to the council was, we didn't get it until it was past the docket deadline for the first meeting, so.
Okay. Do I have any questions from members of the committee? Do you have any members for the committee? Any questions from members of the council? Hearing none, do we have any comments, questions of members of the public? Do we have any questions from members of the public? Hearing none, I need a motion.
Part of the package.
Oh, I'm sorry. So let's go on to 2025-200. Christy, you want to rescind this?
Yes, we'd like to rescind the award to Borden and Remington for the liquid chloride for McDermott Pool.
And the reason to rescind, as you have in your packages, you were having some difficulties acquiring the materials that you need.
Yes, we placed an order on December 30th for chlorine. We were told that it would be delivered on January 7th. On January 10th, they came to deliver. They did not have the right attachment for our tank. And then I had emailed the company. They were unaware that there was an issue with our fill. We had a different fill for our tank. They were rescheduling for Thursday. Thursday came, the chlorine didn't come. Friday, I reached out again and said, we still haven't gotten the chlorine. And the driver was out sick, so we were supposed to get it on Friday, and it still didn't come Friday. There was, again, an issue with the fill. They didn't have the right attachment again. Long story short, Sunday night, I get a text message on Sunday the 12th that we had no chlorine. because it was never delivered on Friday. So, and obviously, the one thing we need to keep the pool open is chlorine. So we are requesting to rescind this, and then the next step is to re-award to the second lowest bidder.
Well, I would, even by my standards, I would say that you were extremely patient with this vendor. Yeah, no, you heard me. I did say it. And also, we also get the calls from folks if that pool is down. And it's particularly upsetting when it's something that's beyond our control. Do we have any questions from members of the committee? Any questions from members of the council? Any questions from members of the public? Do we have any questions from members of the public? Next item, item 3. Oh, that's right, okay. So we've completed the items for 50,000 or over. We are now left with 5 items under 50,000. Does anyone need to have anything, ask any questions from members of the committee? Any items you wish to have pulled? None? Members of the council, any items that you want to have pulled, or you're good? Silence is golden, you're good. Members of the public, are there any items that members of the public would like to have pulled? Any items the members of the public would like to have pulled? Hearing none, we are good with that. All right, I need a motion.
Move favorable action.
We have a motion favorable. We have a second? Second. We have a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? None. Thank you. We will go to PCR 10-25, which is now 2025-300A, Security System Monitoring and Maintenance Service. Christy?
Again, Christy Moretti, Public Works. We are standing by the recommendation that was made at the last meeting to award this bid to National Security in the amount of $75,000 for a 3-year period.
Christy, you may or may not be aware, I had requested or asked some questions regarding this bid, and Director Carlucci did respond with the answers on those. A couple of, at least 2 of those items were in fact included in the bid. One of the items was intentionally left off. But I am going to support your request because my concern is the vendor had added on at least 2 items in his bid that weren't part of your bid request. That, to me, if that was something that we would go along with, would be setting a precedence. And all other bidders down the road could simply use the same thing. Well, I included a couple of things that I thought you should have, or I thought you wanted, so this should go back out for a rebid. No, that's not the way it works. Had a vendor, or in the future, as we've had in the past, vendors have added on to their bids an amendment or a suggestion. We would recommend, we would suggest. That's a different story. Then that's up to the department to decide whether or not you approve of it. I will certainly be supporting your request on this item and for those reasons.
Thank you.
Any questions from members of the committee? Any questions from members of the council?
Not seeing you.
Any questions from members of the public? Do we have any questions or comments from members of the public? Hearing none, I need a motion.
Move favorable action.
We have a motion, excuse me, we have a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you.
Opposed? None? Thank you. Thank you, Christie. The next item on the agenda is PCR 17-25, resolution ratifying the collective bargaining agreement between the City of Warwick and Warwick Lodge Number 7 Fraternal Order of Police for the period of July 1st, 2024 through June 30th, 2027. Before I open this for comments or presentations, I just want to let everyone know, members of the council, as well as members of the public, that we will, or I will, be recommending that this gets moved to the floor without a recommendation. However, I will certainly be allowing for testimony from the administration, from the respective bargaining units, as well as members of the public. If time allows, prior to 7 o'clock, I will ask members of the committee to express any questions that you have. I'm not looking for discussion or your comments. I would be entertaining questions. The same thing with members of the council. If you have questions pertaining to, in this case, PCR 1725, we can have those questions, we can have those discussions, but we will not be voicing comments and then regurgitating it all over again when we go to the floor. Okay, everybody clear on that? All right, Chief, if you could identify yourself for the record, please.
Sure. Good evening, Bill Vicente, Chief of Staff to Mayor Frank Picozzi. Tonight you have before you the ratification of the collective bargaining agreement for Warwick Fraternal Order of Police, Lodge 7. After months of negotiation between the city, the executive board of the union, we came to an agreement. The agreement includes modest salary increases for the hardworking members of the Warwick Police Department. More importantly, the CBA also includes employee contributions into the previously established OPEB trust. More specifically, with regards to the FOP contract, the raises are as follows. July 1st, 2025, 3%. January 1st, 2025, 1.25%. July 1st, 2026, 3.25%. January 1st, 2026, 1.25%. July 1st, 2027, 3.25%. January 1st, 2027, 1.25%. For a total increase of 13.25% over the term of the contract. These numbers are all stated in the Finance Director's fiscal note. In addition, the OPEB deductions for the FOP are as follows. January 1st, 2025, 0.66%. January 1st, 2026, 0.67. January 1st, 2027, 0.67. These are cumulative OPEB deductions. They don't reset on January 1st. It's added to it for a total cumulative OPEB deduction of 2% over the term of the contract. With the OPEB contributions factored in, or the OPEB deductions factored in, the net raises average 3.75% per year. Operationally, the Warwick Police Department, as most police departments throughout the country, are struggling with recruitments to fill its ranks. This was a balance. The contracts before you this evening balances the challenges the city is facing with recruitment, with finances, as well as addressing the OPEB trust contributions to it. We ask for favorable action. The negotiating team for the city that is here this evening. Unfortunately, Finance Director Peter Schaefer could not be here. He's under doctor's orders to rest. Lynn Prodger, the Deputy Finance Director, is here on his behalf, as well as Bruce Kaiser. Colonel Connors can answer any questions regarding operational questions. Bruce and Lynn can answer questions on the finance. Also, Personnel Director Stephen Rotundo is here. Myself and the mayor can answer any questions as well.
Thank you, Chief. Is the city solicitor here?
City Solicitor had a conflict as well. He represents South Kingston as well. He normally does not attend these contract ratifications.
Okay. Do we have representation from the police union that would
Yes, we
like
do.
to speak? Please,
Point of order.
sir.
Point of order, if I could ask anyone who speaks, I know a number of us on the council have some challenges. My personal one is I'm trying to rectify on Thursday when I'm going to an ear, nose, and throat audiologist to see if I might need hearing aids. But if you could hold it up and not dance with the mic so that we can hear the testimony and any questions from the public, I personally would appreciate that. Thank you in advance.
Thank you. Sir, just identify yourself,
Sure
please.
thing. Jedediah Pino, Warwick FOP. Good?
Go ahead.
All right, so good evening, members of City Council, citizens of Warwick in attendance tonight, those watching at home, and members of the Warwick FOP Lodge 7 in attendance tonight. Like stated before, my name is Jedediah Pino, and I am the FOP Lodge 7 president. I stand here before you to speak on behalf of the contract between the city and Lodge 7 and to ask for your support and vote in favor to ratify this contract. This agreement represents more than just a document. It's a testament to the decades of collaboration between the union and the administration. Together, we have worked to balance the critical needs of our officers with the fiscal health of our city. Over the years, the union has demonstrated its commitment to the greater good of Warwick by negotiating responsibly. In a clear example of our willingness to adapt to changing circumstances, Lodge agreed to extend the pension minimum requirements from 20 years to 25 years and reducing maximum pension payouts from 75% to 70%, while adding the need to work 5 extra years, all while contributing to our pension at a rate that's 8 to 10% higher than neighboring departments. We are paying double the pension contributions rates of several departments. Additionally, we shifted from family health care coverage and retirement to single health care coverage. These changes, which now apply to more than half the department, signify significant cost savings for the city while maintaining reasonable benefits for the officers who dedicate their lives to protecting our community. Furthermore, the union has agreed to contribute 2% towards other post-employment benefits. It's important to note that the police union's OPEB liabilities are not as substantial as those of the fire and municipal unions. Yet Lodge 7 has stepped up to share the responsibility of addressing these financial obligations, reflecting our ongoing partnership with the city and the understanding of the broader fiscal challenges we face. The partnership has paid dividends not only in terms of financial stewardship, but also in the safety and security of our community. Warwick continues to rank as one of the safest cities in the nation. This past year, Wallet Hub ranked Warwick 3rd in this country, a remarkable achievement that speaks to the dedication, professionalism, and hard work of our police officers. Their efforts create a safe environment for our families, businesses, and visitors, ensuring that Warwick remains a desirable place to live and work. Warwick faces the same problems occurring nationwide in policing: a lack of qualified applicants to fill open positions and the retention of seasoned officers. Just this past weekend, an applicant in final stages of hiring process couldn't pass a minimum standards physical agility test. In regard to retention, I know of 2 seasoned officers right now not close to retirement that are currently in the process of leaving our department to work somewhere else. Warwick hasn't been at full complement staffing for a very long time, and we must remain competitive in wages and benefits to attract the few actually qualified applicants out there. As you consider this contract, it's essential to recognize that it embodies fairness, responsibility, and a shared vision for our city. The Lodge has consistently demonstrated its commitment to ensuring proper compensation and working conditions for our members while keeping the city's fiscal status in mind. This is a union that not only protects its members, but also protects the future of Warwick. and I urge you to support this contract and continue the partnership that has served our city so well. Together, we can ensure that the city of Warwick remains safe, strong, and fiscally sound for generations to come. Thank you.
Any questions, comments from members of the public? Sir, just identify yourself for the record, please.
Good evening, Mr. Committee
Good evening.
Chair, members of the City Council who are listening in, and members of the public. Can you hear me okay, Mr. Foley?
Yes,
Thank you. I'm going to keep my comments short. I just want to mention that I support your moving this to the regular meeting without recommendation, and then hopefully speak more later in any details. I know that long range, what I've heard in the community, people's concerns about last week, a special meeting to form a budget review committee and forecast deficits within the school department, and concern about, say, credit agency ratings and stuff like that, how they may impact future borrowing for the city. I'd also kind of like to know a little
Mr.
bit
Zarin,
more.
please stay on topic.
I am. I'd like to know a little bit more about this ratification, how this is going to impact the overall total city budget, where the funds are going to come from to pay this. Usually with things like this, what I'm used to looking at is financial statements called sources and uses. Where the source is going to come from, where the use is going to go. Specifically for this, it's a pretty large item. And I do think that the people within the city that reside here or resident electeds pay taxes deserve to see that information before this is ratified. That's all for now. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Zarum.
Good evening. I'm Ann Sheridan from the 9th Ward. And first I'd like to say is God bless the hardworking fire department that we have here, and I wish them all very well. I would like to
Police
say,
Department.
police department, and our fire department too, because they're all really great guys. But anyway, and women. I think you should not vote to approve these contracts today or soon, because I think, like you, we've only had a short time to review them. I know I just saw them on Friday, but that's because I'm a member of the public, and I assume you had more time too. And I'm hoping that if you postpone at least a month, it certainly wouldn't be any hardship to the fire department or the police department, because any increase or contract terms would be retroactive. I, for one, think that the contract that they have is very generous. I think in the past that there's been negotiations towards their favorable positions when you look at whether it's vacation or sick time or longevity bonuses. It's interesting, most of us that have worked, whether it's government or more recently in private, which I did in both, those things were based on a 5-year, a 10-year, a 15-year, or 20-year scale. Our 3 contracts all have different arrangements. Some have 4 days for up to 4 years for one thing and 7 years for another. And I mean, it's all over the place. So those obviously looks like those were individually compensated things. We're giving people retention, we're giving staff bonuses for non-abuse of sick time. Now, in my world, if you abused your sick time, you either get demoted or terminated. So in this world, we give our employees bonuses for showing up on the job, and then we give them longevity on top of that, which actually doesn't discriminate between somebody that's worked all year and somebody that's not been a good steward of his job. You are going to be facing, and we are going to be facing, a $9 million fix with the school department. And I cannot believe that anybody can manage a department or anything and come up with that kind of an error. I mean, months ago, we faced an error where we were charging the wrong FICA tax. How did that go on for like 17 years? Now we've got a school department that's out of control. When you have a budget, you all live on budgets, just like I do. And if we get to the point where we're over budgeted and we're overspent, you got two choices. You can either stop spending or you can file bankruptcy. The city doesn't want to file bankruptcy, so that means we need to stop spending. And stop spending is difficult. It's hard for the taxpayers. And while this is not your direct responsibility, it is your responsibility because you agree to these contracts. The city's out of control, so I think you need to take a deep breath. I don't think the council should spend one nickel until you've got the school department finances straightened out. The policemen deserve the best that they can have. And we certainly have been buying them the best we can. And hopefully we've reached a level where new hirees can come in. But there's a balance. They want COLAs. The rest of us don't get COLAs. And we pay the bill. And we have nowhere to go, but you, as representative of the city, have someplace to go. You come back to us and say, oh, by the way, the tax rate's going to go up 3%, 4%, 5%, 10%. I don't know what the right number is, but there has to be some number that says this is the right amount of tax that should be charged. So I think you really need to take this time between now, and I don't care if it's July, and I know nobody's going to agree with me, but there needs to be a wholesale stop of what we're spending, unless it's like chlorine for the pool, something that's an emergency, till we figure out what's happening. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Any other members of the public? Any other members of the public? Excuse me. Let's maintain decorum, please. We're here to discuss these items. I understand that emotions take place when we have these type of discussions, but I would ask you to maintain decorum and let's everyone stay polite and respectful. We may agree and we may not agree, but we all have the right to speak on what we feel is the right thing to do. Is there anyone else from the public that would like to speak? Anyone else from the public would like to speak? Hearing none, I will move to the committee members. Any questions from members of the committee? Councilman Foley.
Thank you. A question to the union president, please. Identify yourself, please, for the record.
Jedediah Pino, FOP president.
Again, just quickly on my own background, I was a union president for the Davies Teachers Association, so I was involved in numerous negotiations. My question to you is, looking over these contracts after we received them, there wasn't a lot of red lines. There wasn't a lot of contract language that was changed. That's my interpretation. Am I correct?
Correct.
The largest piece was obviously pay raises and your contributions to the OPED. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. That's all my questions for you, sir.
Sure.
Could I have who's speaking for the finance? Thank you, sir. Again, identify yourself when you come to the mic.
Hello, council members. Bruce Kaiser, Director of Economic Development. I participated in the union negotiations and assisted the finance department with the financial analysis.
Okay, I'm sorry, I didn't quite hear you, but that's okay. I was on the record. My question is straightforward. Last year at budget time, the city came to the council and presented a budget. My understanding was that there was a pay raise anticipated when you presented that budget to us, correct?
Correct. It was set aside.
I'm sorry, louder?
Yes, there was a set aside in the budget under employee benefits for contractual increases.
Okay, and the pay raise that was negotiated and agreed to is within that parameter or is just slightly above?
The pay raises cumulatively for both contracts are slightly above.
All right. And my last question for you is, I remember when the actuary came in front of us and presented us, and I mean, for 5 years, members of the council, members of the public have been beating the horse that the OPED, the unfunded liability. My understanding is the agreement or what the unions have agreed to in these contracts and then the MOA that we're looking at later will drastically help fill what they call that unfunded liability. Is that interpretation correct?
Correct. Now, the unfunded liability, as you know from the actuaries' prior visit to the council and their most recent actuary report, which was received just a few weeks ago, was mentioned in the memo from the chief of staff. The actuarial liability is substantial. It's $289 million at the present to pay all committed obligations for future benefits. We did make a first step towards addressing that issue through city-funded other post-retirement benefits, the OPEB, managed by the Rhode Island Interlocal Trust, with general fund allocations in fiscal year 22 and 23, and a healthcare reserve transfer in 24. There currently stands $4.6 million in the healthcare, in the OPEB trust managed by the Rhode Island Interlocal Trust. This 2% at the end of the contract term among 3 unions and the non-union folks that are eligible for retiree health benefits will add another $1.2 to $1.3 million at the current salary base per year. The city's funding will cease, so it's relieving a burden on the city to pay for future retiree health benefits.
So in layman's term, so I can understand it, if when we pass this or vote on this and it passes, the beneficial effects of that, what the unions have agreed to in contributions, will have almost an immediate effect on the financial stability of the city as looked at by outside third parties.
Absolutely. Bond rating agencies have been noting in their credit reports that the city has up until recently has not been taking proactive steps to address a very large retiree health care liability. So this absolutely will help our standing with credit rating agencies.
Thank you. Those are my questions.
Do you have a question?
Yep, I have a question.
Go ahead.
My question is to probably the chief. Yep, there we go. Thank you.
Good evening, Colonel Brad Connor.
Colonel, sorry, chief. That's whatever. Quick question for you. Besides the financial, contracts are more than just financial. We met, what I heard was that, the pay and retention and full complement. How do you envision this contract in helping with retention of your current officers, retention of your newer officers as they move up, and finally, as where does that place the Warwick Police Department in comparison to other police departments?
So it's very difficult to compare every contract through similar police departments, solely because many of the contracts are just so completely different, if you will. One of the things that makes our contract stand out is the 18 plus percentage pension contributions. The closest other agency is around 14, and most are around between 8 and 10. So right there, it's easy for me to compare our contract with Cranston, but when you add up the numbers and you take out the contributions, their average patrolman is walking away at the end of the week with more money than our average patrolman. So when it comes to recruitment and retention, this contract is essential. I look at it, I can give you a couple of examples. We took 2 lateral transfers from other agencies, and within 6 to 8 months of being here, they couldn't afford to live on the pay that we were giving them as a probationary officer. So they both had to go back to their original police department. So that created a situation where we had to look at the pay scale, and we were realizing that we had about a 14,000 per year gap between our first class patrolman and our probationary patrolman. The basic probationary officer under this current contract that we're under right now is receiving $984 a week. After taxes, pension, and healthcare, they're bringing home just over $600. So you could see that maybe a 23-year-old rookie who lives with mom and dad can live on that. But if you have somebody with a family and a child that, you're asking for them to make a lateral transfer to our city, they simply can't afford it. So that was one of the steps we did. Then as the president of the union eloquently stated, over the years, the FOP has worked with the city, and over the course since 2012, benefits from our younger officers, our newer officers, have been dwindled down. So this notion of healthcare for life for every officer does not exist anymore. Family healthcare doesn't exist post-employment. They're now having to do 70% after only 25 years instead of 20. So they've given so much back that some of these younger guys come here and they realize they don't have any of the benefits that some of us older officers are getting. So they want the weekly paycheck. And quite frankly, I think they deserve it. Just about everybody in this up on the dais today has talked to me or my staff, been proud of the work that the officers do day in and day out. There's a group here, and I'm glad that they're here, but there's another dozen or so out on the road now protecting you. It doesn't matter if it's 20 degrees, if 5 degrees, or 85 degrees. They're out there doing a good work. They're doing the traffic studies. They're doing the traffic enforcement. They're in the paper time after time after time or on Facebook getting the accolades. I'm not saying it because I'm the chief. I'm saying it because I'm a proud Warwick resident, but the men and women of the Warwick Police Department, they stand out amongst law enforcement in Rhode Island. They really do. And I've heard it from many of you up there. I think it's time we put our money where our mouth is. I'm a taxpayer too. I understand taxes go up. I really do. I understand. But if you want quality policing, quality officers that are well-trained and well-equipped, you can't nickel and dime. You can't put off contracts until a school department decides to get their finances straight out, or this body who's doing the right thing moving forward decides to take control over the school department's budget. We don't have time. If I can't hire and train the officers, we're just not going to have enough bodies out there. And we've seen it with other agencies. That causes overtime rates to go through the roof. The men and women behind me have worked diligently over the past years to keep our budget in line. They understand they don't get frivolous toys. They don't get new cars every single year. They do have to drive older cars sometimes. They do it with a smile on their face, and they come to work every day. So as a Warwick resident and as their chief of police, I would respectfully ask that you pass this contract.
Thank you. Was that tear in your eyes? I thought after that speech, I saw you rubbing your eyes.
Are you all set, Councilman?
They know your license plate.
Thank you.
Councilman Napa? Any questions? Are you all set, Councilman
I'm all
Muto?
set.
Okay.
Colonel, if I could bother you just one more moment. So you stole essentially everything I was going to ask. You put it all out there. But I do, as you and I have discussed, I think the members of the Warwick Police Department do it right. And I think that's the common feeling across most of our city and across neighboring cities as well. I'm just looking at some comparisons, and correct me if I'm wrong, it seems as though Warwick still is just a couple rungs lower than our neighbors, Cranston, as far as total income. I think you may have touched on that. Kind of take home for the officers. Is that accurate?
Yeah, so it's kind of like, again, apples to oranges, because they pay a lot less towards their pension. Their longevity actually goes up another 1.5 higher than ours. So it's a little tough. Average salary, we may be a little bit higher, but when it's all said and done, they're actually taking home more money than we are.
Now, I know you have a new class coming through soon, and that anticipates us getting pretty close to full staffing. Is that correct?
That's going to put us at 175.
Gotcha.
With spares, because we're putting extras in the academy so that when we graduate that academy, we'll have folks that we can hire in the event that we have retirements.
So essentially, we're putting a full staff on the road at a discounted rate because those folks are coming in as low step officers to get us to full manning, which then has a direct impact to how much overtime we need to spend.
Correct.
which is going to essentially be a net savings for the city. Is that
That's correct.
accurate? That's about all I have.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councilman. I do have some questions to start off with. Mr. Kaiser, please. Just identify yourself again, please.
Bruce Kaiser,
you.
Director of Economic Development.
Director, if you could review with us the fiscal note that was provided by Mr. Schaefer. Particularly, one question I have is, why is he deducting the OPEB contribution?
That is a cost avoidance for the city, recognizing, as I mentioned earlier, that the OPEB liability for credit rating purposes and for future healthcare insurance appropriations is necessary to ease the burden on the city. So it doesn't affect this year's budget because there was a zero appropriation for OPEB, but it affects future burdens for the city.
I don't see how this can be considered a savings. You haven't collected it, so it's going to have to be paid, right? And isn't that money's coming from the taxpayers?
Well, currently our retiree health care is funded entirely through general fund appropriations under the employee benefits line item, which currently stands at about 11.9 million for retiree health care costs. OPEB is a separate line item in the budget for that purpose. As I mentioned earlier, we have set asides that we've made beginning in 22 and 23 of $500,000 in each of those 2 fiscal years. Thereafter, we have taken healthcare reserves and allocated those to the OPEB trust that is managed by the Rhode Island Interlocal Trust. In the last 2 years, we have zeroed out that appropriation in anticipation that the employees were going to pick up that cost. If the OPEB, the 2%, or phased in 2% OPEB through the employees' cooperation did not occur, we would have to appropriate city monies into the OPEB trust in order to try to chip away at that large liability.
You say future. How long in the future are we talking about?
Difficult to say. I mean, obviously, it depends on at 1.2 million a year employee contribution based on the salary scale at that point. That will, in addition to capital appreciation through the investments that are made as managed by the trust, it'll take a while, but it's a start.
A long while.
A long while,
Right.
true.
And how much is the city required to contribute to this OPEB on a yearly basis?
It's discretionary. The administration's position is that it's going to be entirely employee funded. That'll be determined by future administration, the current and future administrations, and the council at budget time. But our view is that the employees will take on that burden by through their withholdings to, over the time and through capital appreciation, increase the portfolio in that trust.
And as you state, we really have no idea how long in the future before this really comes to benefit the taxpayers.
Well,
We don't know that.
As I indicated, through employees taking on this burden now, we are withdrawing, or we're ending city general fund appropriations to the OPEB trust. We continue to pay the ongoing commitment through the general fund for existing obligations, which, as I mentioned, is approximately $11.9 million.
How much is the healthcare cost in total over the next 3 years?
We don't know what
For
the,
all.
we don't know what the inflationary dynamic is with the healthcare at this point. It's been relatively modest over the last few years, between 0 and 3% or so. So we don't know what cost of, what the growth in healthcare costs is going to be, so difficult to say.
I think it's safe to say 50 million plus over the next 3 years.
Hard to say.
And what is the employee contribution towards that 50-some million?
Well, for the active and the retiree, obviously, as we know, there is currently no retiree healthcare co-payment.
I'm speaking to active.
So active, it's 20% of that.
20%
20%
of that.
20% of the active employee healthcare premium cost.
And on the retirees, the taxpayers are picking up 100% of that cost, correct?
That's correct.
And did you say that cost is 11 million plus?
The retiree healthcare cost is just under 12 million current fiscal year.
So why would I be more excited about a 2%, which it's not even 2%? That was kind of like a directive that was given to the two bargaining groups that are here now. Why would I be more excited about a 2% OPEB contribution that's going to take an unforeseeable future to have any benefit to the taxpayers rather than a 5% increase in copay on healthcare?
Well, looking retrospectively, we don't have the ability to legally to apply a retiree healthcare copay to existing retirees.
You have the ability to negotiate it.
Not with the current retirees.
No, I'm sorry, with the active employees.
We do. So if we were to,
Yeah.
if this were to, what we had before you tonight was a proposal in the tentative agreement to impose a retiree healthcare copayment for retirees, say after July 1st, 2025, for example. Those retirees would, based on the level of retirement and personnel director.
Let's stick with the active employees because we know the issue with the retirees. Let's stick with the active employees. My question is, why should I be more excited about a 2%? It's actually less than a 2% copay. Contribution to OPEB than an increase of 5% in the contribution.
For active
For
employees.
copay for active employees.
It's a matter of, additional 5% would, for active employees, would have to be bargained. It would be out of step with the prevailing contribution rates among municipal contracts for public safety and non-public safety employees throughout the state. For those who are public safety employees, they have interest arbitration. Success of achieving that through an arbitration probably is low. And I wouldn't think we would want to have a unbalanced system where non-public safety employees would pay 25% and public safety employees pay something less than that. So yeah, I mean, the standard throughout the state is about 20% copay among public sector employees at the local level.
So why is it that the administration has, again, negotiated a contract with healthcare and that 20%, in the police department's case, 20% is being derived on last year's premium as opposed to this year's premium? Why is it that the 20% copay is determined on last year's premium, not this year's premium?
The 20% copay was based upon this year's premium. It's what we projected, given what our health insurance carrier had provided to us at the time we were doing budget negotiations. So it's personnel directors. Stephen, am I correct on that? It's current healthcare.
I believe it's contained, and I don't think I noted it, but I think it's contained in the contract. We've had this discussion in the past about the 20% copay being derived from the previous year or last year's premium, as opposed to today's premium.
My understanding is that it's based on the expected premium as of July 1st of the fiscal year, for which the salaries are, on which the salaries are based, or the healthcare is based.
During the contract negotiations, did the administration discuss or attempt to get a higher contribution from the copay?
For active employees?
Active employees?
No,
You did not?
no. There is one item, for prescription drug costs, as mentioned in the fiscal note.
I saw
We
it.
did increase that somewhat.
Mm-hmm. It went from, I believe, 300, it increased by 100 for single. And on family, it went from, I believe it was 600 to 700?
800.
800.
And in the prior contracts that were negotiated, it previously been 200 so there's been a stepped increase over the last several contracts. As with many negotiations, each negotiation effort is an opportunity to readdress, originally increase, so the burden on the employees is lessened, and an agreement can be reached.
So I'm going to just swing back to this OPEB thing. In the interim, between today and whenever in the future this OPEB bank account starts to pay the bills, the taxpayers have to pay the bills. The taxpayers have to foot the bills, right?
Correct?
Okay. Hold on a minute.
No, all right. I want to help you here.
Okay, go ahead, as long as you got my clock stopped.
That's it.
Go ahead.
In reference to that, I was a little amiss in deducting the time that the speakers were answering your questions. So I'd like to make a motion to give an additional 2 minutes to the chair. All in favor? Aye. So when you're.
Thank you.
No problem.
This tiered OPEB contribution, what does that average over the next 3 years? Because I believe it starts at 0.66, then goes to 1.33 or something, and then finally 2 in the third year. What's the average on that
For
the 3 years?
It would be 1.33.
1.33.
Yeah.
And what is the difference in the amounts of monies that the taxpayers have to put up from the 2% that was kind of being directed to this particular bargaining group? What is the difference between 2% and 1.33% over 3 years?
I'd have to
It's
do
about
the
a half a
calculation.
million, about $500,000, maybe more.
Well, let's say at the 2% for this contract, it's about $400,000 that would be contributed by the employees at the 2% level.
At the 2% level.
At the 2% level. So 2/3 of that, would be the 1.33.
But it's a big difference.
Excuse me.
It's a big difference. And that's just another cost that
But as
sits on
I
the
mentioned,
taxpayer's side.
As I mentioned,
Okay.
this is not for payments to the general fund appropriation for current retiree health care premiums
Mhm.
that amount to $11.9 million. This is for the set aside to the trust. Absent the contributions from the employees, the city has not committed any funds in the current fiscal year. So there is no additional cost to the city based on it being phased in. It just takes a little bit longer for that trust to build up, given the fact that we haven't reached that 2%.
I think we agree on a lot longer. What is the cost to the taxpayers for healthcare combined between active employees and retired employees per year? What is the cost to the taxpayers?
If I recall correctly, it's 40 million.
Correct. Plus. What is, never mind, this question is for the municipal contract. That's all I have for right now. And thank you for your indulgence. Any questions from members of the council? Councilman Ricks.
Thank you. To start to get some clarification first, I believe
Councilman Ricks, if I may, I just want to reiterate my earlier comments to restrict this to questions. We'll have time after, when this gets to the full floor, for comments, opinions, positions, et cetera. I'm sure we'll all have something to say in that time. Okay, thank you.
certainly, thank you. So earlier, there was a statement that I believe that the $1.3 million would be added as to the OPEB liabilities, rather contribution towards those OPEB liabilities. So to clarify on that, that would be 1.3 million when the 2% is fully phased in for all city employees across all of the collective bargaining units, correct?
Correct.
Okay.
Excuse me. Correct.
And let's see, what's the number that the OPEB unfunded liabilities increase by more or less each year?
As we all know, I think as we come to know, actuarial science is very complex. Takes into account mortality rates, takes into account inflation, healthcare inflation, et cetera, the age demographic of the overall population. The prior year actuarial report had pegged the liability at 295 million. It's now at 289 million. So it's not necessarily on an upward trajectory based on complex of factors.
And I know that a few years ago, before any OPEB trust was opened, it was north of 400 million, but that had more to do with, correct me if I'm wrong, did that have more to do with just the way that the standards change once an OPEB account is actually opened, or was that an actual change in the circumstances of what the liability actually is?
Actually, I don't recall that it was 400 million. I'd have to go back and look at the record. I don't know whether Lynn has an answer to that.
My mic is going, pardon that. Actually, thinking back on it, I believe that back in 2019, it was something like 352 million, and it would be over. City side, back in 2019, I believe it was 352 million, only would have been over 400 million with the school side factored in, which obviously isn't relevant here. So I guess what I'm getting at in terms of just trying to get a picture of how much this is increasing more or less on an annual basis is a few years ago, I want to say 2-3 years ago, we were told when reviewing the local 2748 contract, the firefighters contract, that in order for the future liability for OPEB to basically be covered on a year-to-year basis, not chipping into the liability that already exists, but just covering that future liability that continues to increase, we'd be looking at more or less about 8% employee contributions. And
How much was that?
more or less 8%.
8%?
I believe that that's what that report said a couple of years ago. And so, yeah, that's part of why I would view 2% as significant, because it's more or less a quarter of that increasing contribution. So I suppose that my question is that, in generally speaking, and I know that the numbers shift, the accounting standards shift, all of that, but that's in the generally speaking right ballpark?
I'd have to go back and look at the records. It'd be conjecture on my part. I would
Okay.
mention that I did take a look at several other contracts, as Chief Connor had mentioned, various contracts around the state at public safety or non-public safety. Given the different provisions for leave, for longevity, et cetera, it's hard. It's an apples and oranges comparison. You can't look at it just on salary alone, or on even healthcare contributions alone. It's part of a larger package that negotiated over time. But I did look at the four major cities other than Warwick: Providence, Cranston, East Providence, and Pawtucket. And Pawtucket, by the way, is in interest arbitration for their contract. So we don't know where they stand as far as their salaries are concerned. But by way of example, Cranston has an OPEB for their police union of $600 per year towards a future retiree trust. At the end of this period, at the end of this contract period, when we're at the 2%, assuming an $80,000 salary, we're talking about approximately a $1,600 employee contribution. So substantially higher than a neighboring city. They have a retired employee contribution towards their health care. We do not. That may be part of a future negotiation. $300 per year. The family plan costs $25,000 per year, approximately, and an individual plan about $10,000 or so. So it's a step in the right direction. It eases some burden for the city, but obviously the taxpayers are picking up the burden, largely picking up the burden. East Providence did negotiate a retiree healthcare copay in 2014 of 20%. Somewhat of an outlier among the group. Pawtucket, as I mentioned, they're in interest arbitration with police, but their fire department has an OPEB of 0.5% towards an OPEB. We're shooting for 2%. So it varies. So we're taking the step that we're taking. We've been working with the actuary on pension and future future retiree healthcare costs. He's endorsed this plan, and it's our first step towards getting employee buy-in to addressing what is a significant liability now and in the future.
So, if I may, my next question having to do with the bond rating agencies. I take it that the fact that this contract sets in these various contribution rates as they do on this particular schedule, that's something that would be tended to be viewed favorably by the bond rating agencies?
Yes, absolutely.
Would it be viewed, in theory, more favorably by the bond rating agencies if we were at 2% effective January 1, 2025, as opposed to the phase-in that's currently before us?
I'm not personally qualified to say yes or no on that. I think that they see just having this collective bargaining agreement with an employee contribution, which previously did not exist, with that the phase-in would not necessarily materially affect what they just see it as a positive step. We're eventually getting to a certain threshold, that 2%, And the intervening 2 years, probably not material. But take that with a grain of salt, because I'm not a finance person.
I can appreciate that, and thank you for trying to answer as to that. Let's see. On the negotiation of the OPEB term, the phase-in versus immediately at 2%, if I may ask, what measures did the city take to attempt to negotiate the 2% immediately in effect, as opposed to, well, immediately in effect as in taking effect January 1, 2025, as opposed to the 3-year phase-in?
Well, as you know, the firefighters contract had called for a 2% OPEB contribution effective January 1st, 25. And that was in anticipation that there would be other contracts for the other two unions negotiated up to that point in time. Actually, these two contracts we're talking about tonight expired June 30th of 24. The January 1, 25 period that was set in the fire contract was in anticipation that if we got an agreement with fire and police and the municipal union, that we'd have a 6-month lag period before that would go into effect, that all unions would be affected simultaneously. With respect to the question concerning what was the city's position at the outset of negotiations, yeah, we put on the table the 2% to match what was approved or ratified previously in the fire contract. There was a lot of back and forth over a number of months, as the chief of staff had mentioned, and the unions were, we couldn't get to that 2% as of January 1. Their view, and Jeb can respond to this, was that 2% all at once was too big of a hill to climb. It was too much of a chunk out of employees' take-home wages. And so we went back and forth, and we came up with a phase-in which was acceptable to everybody.
Could that concern about that big chunk coming out of the paycheck have been avoided by simply front-loading some of the raises, so that that 2% wouldn't be felt in the same way in the paychecks?
We had talked about front loading, and we kicked that back and forth as a provision that might allow us to reach an agreement, but we didn't get there.
So, given that when the former city council, I understand that 5 of us who voted on that particular contract are here, 4 of us are new. When the former city council voted to approve the fire contract a couple of years ago, there was that concession that was built in, that there was a certain assumption in there. Effectively, approximately how much money is being left on the table as a result of this phase-in, as opposed to activating that contingency in the local 2748 contract, which, if the contracts before us tonight were to have gone to the 2% effective January 1st this year, basically what's the difference in money being left on the table as to that contingency in the other contract?
I believe if I recall, that IAFF contract or the fiscal note for the IAFF contract had an expectation of given salary levels at the time, to which that 2% would have applied. For this period would be about $182,000. So we're, in terms of the OPEB contribution, probably 120,000 or so.
So if I could just go over some numbers to verify, I think that we had talked about this some earlier today. I just have some very rough math here, but The $182,000 from the fiscal note, I believe that it was dated November of 2022. The $182,000 and change only related it to 6 months of fiscal year 25. Fiscal year 25, including, of course, the last half of calendar year 2024. So it would effectively be double that for an entire fiscal year. And then doing a little bit of subtraction, let's see, what I was coming up with, without even factoring in raises or differences in staffing or anything like that. So I want to emphasize that this is very intended to be just ballpark. Would be, pardon me one moment as I just pull this up. Yeah, so looking at just each 6-month period, 182,000, but 1/3 of that, 60.66%, difference being $121,000. And then the same thing for that second 6-month period, last half of 2025. Then it goes up to 1.33%. So basically, both halves of the year of 2026 calendar year would each be kind of the reverse of that, where it's basically 61 grand left on the table for each of those 6 months. Add that all up and you get a bit over $360,000. Very much ballpark. I don't want to pretend that this is precise, but it seems like a pretty substantial amount of money being left on the table that was already there as a concession. So I guess that my confusion here is, if that much money was being left on the table, why wasn't there a way to make this work, to get that 2% and collect that money that had already been conceded by one bargaining group, and then otherwise just have that overall benefit of instantly getting to that 1.3 million a year being set aside in OPEB, instead of effectively first year 1/3 of that, second year 2/3 of that. That adds up to be literally millions of dollars that would otherwise be going into OPEB if those terms had been negotiated.
Well, as you know, we entered into good faith negotiations with, it's not unilateral. And the unions, as I mentioned before, felt the phase-in was more acceptable to their employee group. And you work the salary against that. If we had established 2%, or if we were pushing for 2% as a drop dead requirement in the negotiations, first of all, the police union has the ability to go to interest arbitration, which may have been the step that they had taken. We don't know. And then the end result of that is, first of all, only a 1-year contract. Probably wouldn't include any retiree healthcare contribution, whether it's, I don't mean existing retirees, but a contribution towards future retiree health benefits. So it was not negotiable under good faith terms, and we achieved the agreement that we have before you. As mentioned before, and it's true, that if we had that 400,000 or 360,000 from the fire union going into effect now, as well as with the other unions, that would have expanded significantly what was initially, or what was going into OPEB through employee contributions at the present. But with respect to the credit rating agencies, I said, I don't think it really would affect what our bond rating is going to be, and what the cost of our bonds will be. And it's going to take many years before this OPEB trust to start to bear fruit. So I don't think that loss of time from January 1st, 2025, and not having 2% is going to significantly affect what the taxpayer burdens in the city.
Councilman Ricks, do you have any additional questions?
Let's see.
If you do, I'm going to need to move for a couple minutes for you.
I understand. I'll let other members of the council speak first, but if not, I do have a couple of quick follow-ups. Thank you.
Make a motion to extend Councilman Ricks for another 2 minutes, please. I have the second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Go ahead, Councilman.
Thank you. So when it comes to OPEB, pensions, those types of long-term liabilities, would it be fair to say that at the end of the day, if the city were to have trouble paying for, meeting its obligations under a specific budget, whether it's because of increases in one line item or another, end of the day, it's all in the same boat, right?
I'm not sure I understand the question.
Yeah, so what I'm getting at is that whether basically a dollar is a dollar, and if the city is obligated to pay a dollar, then whatever category that dollar is characterized as, if it's something we have to pay, it's something that we have to pay.
If you're referring to pension and healthcare, we have our annually required contributions as determined by the actuary, and that's what we include in the budget for council consideration each year.
Oh, certainly. I suppose what I'm getting at here is that it's important to, from a financial perspective, take a look at the city's total financial unfunded liabilities, not just necessarily silo them independently, because ultimately, if the city has trouble paying for unfunded liabilities in any given category, then it doesn't necessarily keep us out of bankruptcy, that we're doing just fine on, say, the pensions and healthcare, if, let's say, we're not able to cover the bills on the retiree health insurance, often referred to as OPEB, right?
Well, obviously, you look at the entire city budget as consists of many different facets: departmental operations, et cetera, employee benefits, and we've been successful, working in cooperation with the council and getting approved budgets, that we've seen surpluses in each of the last number of years. So the balance, the undesignated fund balance, has improved significantly over the last several years. So we have been able to meet those all-encompassing obligations.
Yeah, and obviously, looking at the fund balance over the last several years is beyond the scope of this. That's a much longer conversation that I won't quite get into this evening. But turning gears a little bit, going back to the fiscal note, a different topic that we talked about earlier this morning over the phone. Is there any fiscal impact to the addition of one personal day under the FOP contract?
I'll let the chief address that.
Councilman, that's slightly a moving target, because the personal day really doesn't impact cost, because if a detective takes it off or a commanding officer takes it off, then it won't create overtime. In a worst case scenario, every single patrol officer that takes it off takes it at a time when they couldn't ordinarily, and it would create overtime. But being at full staffing within the next 6 to 8 months, I don't foresee that being an issue. I can't give you a dollar amount.
Thank you. That's very good to hear. That's obviously a very separate topic from OPEB, but it was something that stood out to me, that the personal day was not noted in the fiscal note. So I just appreciate having that overview as part of the presentation to explain exactly why it wasn't specifically discussed there. Make sure that it wasn't a matter of an oversight. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilman. Any other members of the council have any questions? Any members of the council have any questions? I'm going to ask one more time for members of the public who may have come in late. Does anyone else have any questions, any comments from members of the public? Hearing none, I do have one follow-up for Mr. Kaiser. You stated that bond counsel would be looking favorably on our rating if this 2%, 0.66 to 2%, whatever that number is, were to be approved. Is that because there is such a drastic reduction in that $400 million outstanding liability that Councilman Ricks mentioned, as a result of the city putting in $500,000?
It's
As a matter
because
fact,
of,
what is the reduction that took place from the $400 million?
As I said, I
unfunded-
don't recall the $400 million figure.
Okay.
I'd have to go back and look at prior reports. Yeah, I'm not, so I'm not familiar with that.
But there was a drastic reduction, far greater than $500,000 that was put in, right? I believe the reduction.
Well, I said it's
was-
went from 295 to 289. That was based on the various elements that and calculations that go into actuarial determinations. They said demographics, healthcare cost increase expectations, mortality rates, et cetera. So, yeah, those will all come into play.
But the reality is the formula that's used presents a very different balance for a minor, not minor, let me rephrase that. For a $500,000 investment, the reduction is dramatic, right?
Well, again, I can't
Okay.
speak to the issue of how dramatic a change from some prior report was or projection. So,
Okay.
yeah, I can't address that.
All right, thank you. I'm going to ask for a motion to move this to the floor with unfavorable action. And before I do, I just want to let everyone know that once it does go to the floor, the members of the public, you will have another opportunity to ask any follow-up questions. So I'm looking for a motion to move this item PCR 17-25. I'll make a motion to move PCR 17-25 to the floor without a recommendation.
Without, second.
We have a motion, we have a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Okay, moving on. Item number 4, PCR 18-25, a resolution ratifying the collective bargaining agreement between the City of Warwick and Council 94, Local 1651, for the period of July 1, 2024 through June 30th, 2027.
Good evening, Bill Facenti again, Chief
Good
of Staff
evening,
to Mayor
Director.
Cozy.
Chief?
Like the Fraternal Order of Police contract, tonight you have the contract with Council 94, Ask Me, AFL-CIO Local 1651. Similar to the FOP contract, substantial negotiations went on for months regarding increases, OPEB, contributions, things like that. Similar to FOP, the union and the city came to an agreement, a memorandum of understanding, a tentative TA. and to provide modest increases in both the salary of the hardworking members of Council 94, as well as a 2% over the 3-year OPEB. I'll go through the proposed raises for Council 94. July 1, 2025, 2.75%. January 1, 2025, 0.90%. July 1st, 2026, 3%. January 1st, 2026, 0.9%. July 1st, 2027, 3%. January 1st, 2027, 0.9%. Total increase of 11.45 over the term of the contract. Similar to the FOP, we were able to negotiate the first step in funding an OPEB trust. OPEB deductions for Council 94 are as follows. January 1st, 2025, 0.66%. January 1st, 2026, 0.67%. January 1st, 2027, 0.67%. For cumulative over the 3 years, 2%. With the OPEB deductions factored in, the net raises averages 3.15% per year, which is slightly higher than the Social Security raises, and inflation at approximately 2.5%. Similarly to the police department, the city, Council 94, the administration struggles with recruiting for many of the skilled positions within our city, including operators, CDL drivers, and other skilled employees. We're here to answer any questions. I ask for favorable action.
Thank you, Chief. If you'd stated, actually, my first question is to you. I was waiting till we had both of these proposed contracts in front of us. Why wasn't these contracts forwarded to us prior to less than 3 weeks ago?
So the ordinance requires 14 days. The new council was sworn in on January 6th. These were sent on January 10th. We had them earlier, but we understood the new council and the current members that are holdovers wanted the new council members to vote on these contracts. So that's why.
Yeah, well, I anticipated that answer. I was the one that made a point of that on the council floor to wait to vote until we knew who was going to be sitting here and who wasn't, who was going to be newly elected. And we knew that very early in November. We knew who was elected to the council. So why wasn't the sitting members and the newly elected given these contracts sooner? Because they were signed on the 9th and the 10th of October.
So we're also waiting for the MOA for the fire department. Just so you know, all of these contracts are contingent on all 3 of the unions agreeing to OPEB contributions and deductions.
The demand by the fire department, that 2% you're talking about?
So the 2% that was in their contract 2 years ago.
Sure, I'm familiar with it.
Right. So we waited for after the election, that was November 8th. And we provided them in accordance with the ordinance.
Okay. Mr. Kaiser. Okay. Mr. Kaiser, just hold off for 1 minute. Councilman Foley just brought up a good point. I would like to have the representative from the municipal workers come to the mic and do your presentation as well.
All right, there we go. Everybody hear me all right? Okay. All right. Jason Wendelowski, President, Local 1651. Just going to go with a broad statement here. Good evening, members of the City Council. Thank you for the opportunity to address you this evening regarding the proposed contract between the city and Local 1651. I stand here on behalf of the hardworking union members who have devoted their time, energy, and talents to serving the city of Warwick and its citizens with dedication and pride. The contract before you tonight represents months of negotiation conducted in good faith with the shared goal of balancing city needs and the well-being of its employees. What we have achieved in this agreement is a fair and equitable compromise that not only helps address the city's concerns, but also ensures that the employees of Local 1651 can earn a livable wage, one that reflects the value of their hard work and the rising cost of living. This contract acknowledges the importance of maintaining a workforce that is motivated, supported, and able to continue delivering the highest standard of service that our residents deserve. By approving this contract, you will take a critical step towards strengthening the partnership between the city and its employees. This agreement represents more than just numbers on a page. It's an investment in the people who maintain Warwick's infrastructure, provide essential services, and ensure the safety and well-being of our community. We hope for a favorable outcome tonight that will allow us to build a stronger, more sustainable future for Warwick on a united front that is focused on serving the city and its citizens to the best of our abilities. Thank you for your time and consideration. We look forward to your support. Thank you.
Are there any members of the public who would like to speak? Any members of the public would like to speak? Hearing none. Mr. Kaiser. Thank you, sir. So I'm not going to be repeating all of the questions that I asked earlier, but many of them also pertain to this agreement. But I would like to start off by asking you to run through the fiscal note for this contract. If you could just go through the steps on this fiscal note and how these numbers arrived. I get the same question on the OPEB contribution, showing it as a savings, but I disagree with that.
So for the municipal contract, the fiscal elements consist of the salary increases of, as mentioned by the chief, 2.75 as of July 1, retroactive July 1 of 24, 0.9% that would be effective of January 1st of the current fiscal year, 3% July 1, 25, 0.9% January 1, 26, and 3% July 1, 26, 0.9% January 1st, 27. The cost of that on salary basis is $559,000 in fiscal 25, $625,000 in 26, and $649,860 in fiscal 27. The other two items of fiscal nature were a boot allowance, expanding the number of, or the title classification of employees eligible for boot reimbursement. That will cost us an additional $11,500 each of the fiscal years. It's a fixed rate, so yeah, that's not increasing. Current the current expenditure is about $6,000. It'll go to $18,000, hence the difference. And then the OPEB contributions, as noted, with the phase-in, $61,540 in the FY25 expectation, $191,007 in fiscal 26, and $331,478 in fiscal 27. So the total initial contract cost of, again, deducting out the OPEB contribution as a cost avoidance on the part of the city. That's how that was conceived. $509,568 in the current fiscal year, $445,909 in fiscal 26, and $329,882 in fiscal 27. There are enterprise funded positions within the municipal bargaining unit, and that doesn't come out of the general fund budget, but the cost in each of those, excuse me, yeah, in each of those fiscal years is $82,539, $75,978 in fiscal 26, and $56,729 in fiscal 27. So the net general fund cost to the city is $427,029 in the current fiscal year, $369,931 in fiscal 26, and $273,153 in fiscal 27.
In the bottom of Mr. Schaefer's fiscal note, he says, if the city applies the same wage provisions to non-union personnel, there will be additional cost. What is that additional cost? Or what could that additional cost be?
It's indicated that the non-union salary budget is $7,772,406. Now, so the salary increases are to be determined by the administration, assuming, for parity purposes, that the non-union employees receive the same salary increase as the municipal union contract. We'd have 3% as of, 2.75% as of July 1, retroactive July 1, 24, and 0.9% in January 1. I haven't done the math to do that, but this key distinction modifies that somewhat in that I think it's post 2012 or 2014, non-union employees are not eligible for retiree health benefits. So
I'm sorry, say that again?
Non-union employees are not eligible for retiree health benefits post 2012 or 2014. So the administration may make the determination that the January 1 increase is going to be lesser than the 0.9 because they're not having withholding taken from their paycheck. There are 33 out of the non-union workforce. There's only 33 employees that are currently on staff that are going to be eligible for future retiree health benefits. So there's been a significant turnover since that ordinance was enacted. So it'll be lesser than the 3% and the 9%. That's what I'm saying.
But we don't have a hard number what that cost could be, because that in fact would have to be added on to this increase as well, right?
Yes. Yes.
And that could be a fairly heavy number.
Well, it's the union payroll is.
How many non-union personnel do we have?
About 98 positions, Counselor.
98. All right, I'm going to ask you, and it can be directed to whomever. These are some questions that were sent to me earlier today. It was actually later this afternoon to be asked. How many municipal employees do we currently have?
Stephen Rotondo, Personnel Director. So
Could you hold the mic closer, please, and just identify yourself for the record?
Stephen Rotondo, Personnel Director, City
Thank
of
you.
Warwick. The number, in response to your questions earlier, or the questions we received earlier today, we have 406 regular full-time and part-time non-sworn positions.
I'm sorry, how many was that?
406 regular full-time and part-time non-sworn positions are budgeted in fiscal 25. We run vacancy reports about every few months. The last one was completed 12/31/24. We had 46 vacancies, so there's approximately 360 non-sworn employees. We have among those, and I didn't parse that out within the who's non-union, union, and non-union. In general, right now we have, as I said before, let me check my notes. Right now, on staff, this is number is good till maybe a few weeks ago. There are 98 non-union municipal employees, full and part-time. And of those, about 33 are eligible for post-employee health insurance benefits. People hired, I believe, is after 2012, are not eligible. So about 65% of our current non-union employees are eligible, are not eligible for any post-employment health insurance.
And what is the average salary for
I don't
those
have that.
employees?
I don't have the number for average salary for city employees.
That was one of the questions that I had submitted earlier. I don't
In the
recall
time we
if I got
had,
an answer.
I couldn't pull that.
Okay. And what's the amount of paid holidays they get? I believe it's 17.
That is that's in the contract. It's not 17. If you do the floating, it could be. It also depends on years. It's it's less. It's one less every other year because of the election day, and it's also, excuse me, one. It's also if Christmas falls on Sunday or Monday, they don't get the half day there. So it's about, it could be 15 if we count the two floating holidays. And if you add in the Juneteenth that was just added.
I'll move on to my next question. What percent does the taxpayers, the city, pay into the retirement account each year? What percent of the municipal salary does the city pay in retirement now?
The employees have a fixed percentage of, well, it depends on the employee group, but municipal employees 9.5% on employees hired before a certain date, 10% for new employees. The city's contribution is the actuarially determined budgetary amount, not a specific percentage of employee salary.
If I remember correctly, I looked for it today. I couldn't find it, but I believe Joe Newton of Gabriel Roeder last time in said it was somewhere in the vicinity of 40%.
This is the municipal. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, the current fiscal year city's contribution is actuarially determined is for municipal employees is $8,792,265. And again, that's based on a number of factors that the actuary determines based on our portfolio investments, return on investments, et cetera, expectations of mortality, retirement age, a host of things.
I'm sorry, Bruce, could you repeat that number, 8 million what, please?
So this is for municipal employees. The 24-25 actuarially required contribution is, and this is what was budgeted, $8,792,265.
Okay. And is there one healthcare plan for all city employees, or is there a different plan for different bargaining groups?
There's, Stephen, can I say, police have a health savings account, Blue Solutions. Municipal and fire have Blue Cross HealthMate.
HealthMate coast to coast, and everyone else.
And
has
go to the mic, please.
Everyone else has HealthMate coast to coast. If you want to go to all the different contracts, some of the contracts have a different pharmacy cap, 300, 600 versus 400, 800. But that's all with the exception of the Blue Solutions for the police, the police account. Everyone else is on HealthMate coast to coast.
Now, in addition to the HSA of, I believe it's 4,000 for the police department, they still get the health cares, right? They get the same coverage as the rest of the city.
Oh, you mean the coverage levels are about the same? Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Would it be fair to say that the taxpayers will be contributing, this is over the next 3 years, into the OPEB trust fund, 14 million into the OPEB trust fund, in addition to approximately 42 million in retiree healthcare claims over the years, over 3 years, for a total of $36 million. Is that an accurate number?
Well, the OPEB trust, the city is not going to be contributing any general fund revenues. It'll be going forward. It'll be entirely
The taxpayers will.
What's that?
The taxpayers will.
Not to the OPEB.
Then taxpayers are not putting in any money into OPEB.
Going forward, no.
I'm sorry?
Going forward, no, not to OPEB. But it may be a semantic conversation as far as the retiree healthcare premiums for current retirees and those that will retire in the next 3 years or so. The cost of that healthcare premium, current year, as I mentioned earlier, is $11.9 million. As healthcare inflation affects that number, and the number of retirees persons in retirement will affect that number.
The OPEB contribution I'm talking about by the taxpayers is for active employees.
Yeah, that's what I say. I'm talking about I was referring to the OPEB trust.
Yeah.
That was a misunderstanding. Yeah, so the retiree health benefit other post-employment benefits is currently $11.9 million for current retirees. That number is going to grow with future retirees, but it also is affected by mortality and health insurance costs.
Okay, that's the questions I have right now. I'll reserve my time. Councilman Muto.
Thank you. One.
Sorry to interrupt, but because we're close to 7, if possible, if a member of the committee could discharge this to the full council with no recommendation and to allow for public comment at that point, and then all council people can put their questions then.
I make a motion to move this this
You can just say so moved.
PCR 1825.
PCR 18-25 to the full council without a recommendation.
Second.
We have a motion, we have a second, all in favor?
And that motion includes with public comment, correct?
It'll include public comment.
I make a motion to move PCR 19-25, a resolution ratifying the memorandum of agreement between the City of Warwick and Local 2748, International Association of Firefighters, AFL-CIO, relative to Employee Benefits Trust Fund to the full council without recommendation.
And
We
with
have a
public
motion, we
comment.
have a second.
All in favor?
All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Ayes have it. Okay. The Finance Committee will continue at another time. It's 6:53.
So committees have concluded. We'll be in recess until 7 o'clock, at which point we'll proceed with the normal agenda, which includes going over the 2 items that were just moved to the full floor with no recommendation, at which point we'll take public comment for those 2 items. Bear in mind that the other item, the police contract, has already had public comment, and there will be no further public comment on that item.
So I'm thinking about not doing that certification tomorrow.
Mr. Sinapi? Mr. DeLuise? Mr. Foley?
Here.
Mr. Gephardt?
Here.
Mr. Kirby?
Yeah.
Mr. Lattiser?
Here.
Mr. Muno?
Here.
Mr. Napa? Mr. Rick?
Here.
9 present.
To the flag of the United States of America, to the republic which stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleaming, whose bright stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight o'er the ramparts we watched were so gallant.
Next, we have general communications for announcements of congratulations, condolences, or community events. Do any members of the council have anything for general communications? Councilman Muto.
Thank you. Condolences for a long life, for Kenneth Burke, who is a lifelong resident of Warwick. He was 78, recently passed this past January. Good friend and close friend of our colleague, Jack Kirby. He's survived by his wife, they were married for 54 years. And he was a local business owner for the past 60 years. He's also survived by his two daughters, Kimberly and Shannon. Asking for a moment of silence.
Please have a moment of silence for Mr. Kenneth Burke. Do any other members of the council have anything for announcements of congratulations, condolences, or community events? Seeing none, we can move on to acceptance of the minutes from the council meeting held on January 13th, 2025. Do we have a motion? Motion made by Councilman Ricks. Do we have a second? Councilman Gebhardt. All in favor? Aye. All opposed? All right. That passes. Now, January 22nd, 2025 minutes. Do we have a motion for approval? From Councilman Lattiser, motion for approval, seconded by Councilman Gebhardt. All in favor? Aye. All opposed? All right, so that's approved. Next, we have public comment. Rule 41, after general communications and prior to the consent calendar at the last regularly scheduled meeting of the City Council each month, there shall be a period of time not to exceed 30 minutes during which citizens may comment about Warwick City government issues, subject to the following stipulations. The total period of time for public comment shall not exceed 30 minutes. Comments need to be brief in order to allow as many citizens as possible to participate. Each citizen signed up and present shall have not to exceed 5 minutes to speak, provided, however, that if more than 6 citizens are signed up and present, the 30 minutes will be split evenly amongst speakers. Time shall not be transferable amongst speakers. The topics for comment shall be issues directly affecting city government. City council members will not respond to questions during the public comment period, and the public comment session will terminate at the expiration of the earlier of all speakers concluding their allotted time or 30 minutes. Waiver of this provision requires a unanimous vote of the council. First on the sign-up sheet, we have Mr. Richard Langseth. And just make sure, despite the fact that I already did it, to identify yourself.
Does this work? No. Is this working?
Yep.
Oh, okay. Richard Langseth, Budlong Farm, and we're going to talk about Buttonwoods again. I have a letter from Nixon Peabody to the Buttonwood Beach Association that says that the sewer authority spent $4,200,000 to build the sewers in the Buttonwoods Fire District. And of that, $400,000 was for extra things that were unanticipated, probably at the fault of the fire district or the beach association. Then on page 2, it goes on to explain that they are deferring $600,000 in the expenses that the Beach Association and the Fire District should have paid to the City of Warwick. They deferred $600,000 because the land was not being developed, that it was open land. And what they said was in 20 years, they made a little deal that they didn't have to pay the $600,000 ever, but at the end of 20 years, they have to pay $400,000. Now that is 3 years from now. And yet, even so, even after that, there's $1 million that the city gave to the Beach Association and Fire District for whatever reason. I don't know. They just gave it away. And this is an example of the city government giving things away for which there's never any money coming back. And I think there are other examples of that going on tonight, but I really don't want to get into that too much. But we need to be very, very careful that what we, in quotes, give away in terms of benefits or what have you, needs to come back somehow. We can't be in a situation where We give stuff away and it never comes back. Here we have the Beach Association owing $400,000 to the city of Warwick in 3 years, and they have no income at all, zero. We need to be responsible about this kind of thing. When we contract with people or when we do this or do that, we need to know that there is money to pay. And this is a perfect example of what happens when there isn't money to pay. Now what's going to happen, I can assure you, in 3 years, they are going to come before the city council and they're going to say, gee, we don't have the money, we're sorry. And you know what the city council has to do then or before then? Is take down the no trespassing signs on that highway. That highway has been a public highway since colonial times. There is a map in Parliament, which is now in the Library of Congress, that says that Buttonwoods Avenue is a public highway to the shore in the 1700s. And then in the 1800s, many more maps, many more things going on. Buttonwoods Avenue is a public highway to the sea. And you know what I hear from everybody around here? Oh, we can't deal with these people at Buttonwoods. They're too powerful. They have too much money. You know what? There are 30,000 families in the city of Warwick, and there's probably 50 families living at Buttonwoods year-round. And these 50 families can tell the city that, oh, you can give us all kinds of money, but we're not going to give you anything back. Now, that's a real problem when it comes to employee benefits. I've been in the employee benefit business for many, many years. And what the deal is the employees pay, they contribute, they pay part, they pay 20%, they pay 30%. Here we have the city of Warwick saying, oh, we're going to give this away. Okay, give it away. But what are we going to get back for it? That's what I want to know.
1 minute, Mr. Langseth.
Okay. So anyway, in terms of Buttonwoods, what's going on is I'm going to the CRMC next week, and we're going to talk about the right-of-way to the shore, and I hope that the city council supports me on this because it's part of the SAMP, the Greenwich Bay SAMP plan, and you folks have promised to make all the rights-of-way possible that you can find, and here's the most obvious one in the whole state of Rhode Island, and we really need to think about this and help me with it. And I'll help you if you help me. Thank you very much. And I'll pass this letter to the city council by email.
So next we have the Honorable Tim Howe.
Good evening. Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, it's good to see you, my former and colleagues, my new elected officials, Councilman Brian Napper, my councilman. My name is Timothy Howe. I live in Ward 3, and I am a taxpayer within the city of Warwick, a resident within the city of Warwick, and I'm here to speak in favor, not to interrupt the committee for 10 minutes at each collective bargaining discussion. I'm here to give you one full big endorsement for approval of these collective bargaining contracts that are going to be before you this evening. And the reason why I'm doing that is I've always seen things in a math lens as the big, the moderate, and the small, direct or indirect, if you will. Federal government collects a lot of taxes depending on someone's income, a lot of taxes through fuel tax, other taxes, and they handle a big globe, a big umbrella. The state handles the state of Rhode Island. They charge a lot of taxes, but everything that we pay here in the city of Warwick is direct services. When we call 911, we anticipate and we expect and we receive the Warwick Fire Department. We anticipate, we accept, and we receive the Warwick Police Department. And when it snows, we anticipate, we expect, and we receive the best plowing. We get the sanitation. When we go to the Sawtooth building and we need our city services, whether it be the taxes, whether it means clarification, building permits, business permits, that is direct services to the city of Warwick. There is no need that we should put the burdens of the federal financial burdens or the state financial burdens. I think that this council, this administration have done a great job in preparing and in planning for what is coming in the future. These workers, the services are second to none. I think if any of us drive around the city and the state, or drive around the state and other cities, we can see some challenges. They have slightly different challenges than us and some of the same challenges. But as a taxpayer and as a resident, I certainly hope you really do keep in mind and consider approving the 3 contracts that are before you today. Councilman Ricks, I want to commend you. I want to congratulate you. I remember when we were first on the council, we were elected the same time together, and you pushed for OPEP, and you again and again stated OPEP. There needs to be something about OPEP. In all 3 contracts that is being heard tonight, there is OPEP contributions. That was something that people listened to. That was something the administration adhered to. That was something that people within the council, including myself, listened to, paid attention to, and heard. So congratulations. I look forward to you giving a big thumbs up on these contracts, because your drum that you beat for many years respectfully is now included in these contracts as we prepare for that next phase. I want to say thank you, and I want to wish you all the very best and have a wonderful month. Thank you.
Next, we have the consent calendar, PCR 21-25, resolution relative to bids. This is Councilman Lattiser.
I'm sorry, repeat that, Council President.
So we have the consent calendar now, PCR 21-25, resolution relative to bids.
Sure.
Can you issue the report for finance?
Finance Committee recommends favorable action.
For action,
Move favorable action.
motion made and seconded by Councilman Foley, Councilman Napa. All right, Councilman Lattiser.
Item number 1, 2025-347, purchase of commercial and industrial equipment. Item 2, 2025-200, liquid chlorine for McDermott Pool. Number 3, 2025-200, liquid chlorine for McDermott Pool. Number 4, 2025-001, maintenance and repairs of Thayer Warburton Ice. 2025, Adobe licensing and support. Number 6, 2025-355, telecommunications carrier investigations. And number 7, 2021, motor oil and oil filter.
Any questions or comments on the consent calendar that weren't heard in committee? Seeing none. Do we have a motion on the consent calendar? Oh, already moved and seconded, so clerk will call the roll.
Mr. Snappy,
Aye.
Mr. DeLuise, Mr. Foley,
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. Yes.
Yes.
Yes.
Now to unfinished business. First, we have PCR 10-25, 2025-300A, because there weren't enough numbers before. Security System Monitoring and Maintenance Service. This is Councilman Lattiser.
Committee recommends favorable action.
For action, Councilman Lattiser.
Recommend favorable action on PCR 10-25, now 2025-300A.
Seconded by Councilman Mito, Councilman Gebhardt. Do you have any questions or comments that weren't made in committee? All right, clerk will call the roll. Yes.
Yes. Yes.
Yes. Yes. Yes.
Yes.
Yes.
On to new business. First, we have PCR 17-25, resolution ratifying the collective bargaining agreement between the City of Warwick and Warwick Lodge Number 7, Fraternal Order of Police, for the period of July 1st, 2024 through June 30th, 2027. We've already had public comment on this one, and Councilman Lattiser, can you please give us the report from Finance?
Committee moved to the floor for, without a recommendation for discussion.
All right, and Councilman Lattiser, you want to be recognized first?
Sure. So over the years, excuse me, over the years, many of you in this room have heard me talk about the healthcare costs, the legacy costs, the pension costs. You've heard me talk about the cost of retirees with free lifetime health care. I had said long ago that any future contracts that come before me did not include some serious movement on those costs to the taxpayers, which I had on a couple of occasions put ordinances in to increase, that I would not be able to support that contract. We haven't seen this. We have our finances at a place where they've never been. We have very little movement on those huge costs, the most significant costs that we have. I don't have an issue with raises and paying our employees a fair wage. That's not the issue. I'm fine with raises. I'm fine with what our employees do. They all do a great job. But I also have a responsibility to the taxpayers who pay the bills. And this indebtedness that continues to mount is not sustainable. We know where we are with these problems, and the problems are only getting worse. And the danger, the pending danger with two significant issues that are out there are going to have a very serious impact on our bond rating. Just a few days ago, our finance director said that 2 out of the 5 criteria for a state takeover is imminent. It's right here. We have a fiscal responsibility to address these problems and to continue on with the long-term debt that we have with the healthcare issues and the pensions, the lack of contributions, free lifetime healthcare, particularly for new hires. That's what I had stated for new hires. I didn't talk about taking away lifetime healthcare from existing workers, existing employees. Those are here. Fortune 5 companies don't offer these benefits any longer because they're not affordable. To say that this shouldn't be corrected and that let's just continue letting it go year after year after year is just going to compound the problem. So I guess the bottom line for me is that we've already been informed that there's a possibility, good possibility of a maximum tax increase this year and perhaps foreseeable future. I think that there's a possibility, in addition to maximum tax increases, that we could also see supplemental tax increases. If we don't take care of this financial crisis that we are facing, the state will take over. And you've heard it before. We've heard it years ago. We asked our actuaries, probably 6 or 7 years ago, when are we going to get to the point of no return? And the answer for some of you who were on the council then, or in this chamber, was you've already reached it. It just doesn't seem to mean to folks that we're ever going to get there. I will not be able to support this contract Not because I disagree with the pay raises, excuse me, not because I don't believe our police department does an outstanding job. They do. But because they have not negotiated a reasonable contribution or increase in contribution to the healthcare costs, to take control of free lifetime healthcare for new hires, to have a responsible contribution for retirees, and to increase the cap on prescription drugs. For those reasons, as I've stated in the past, I will not be able to support this contract. Thank you.
All right, do any other members of the council have any comments or questions? Councilman Ricks.
Thank you, President. So I'm a bit divided on this one. I'll walk through that a little bit. First, before I do want to thank for their service all of the members of Warwick's Police Department, truly Warwick's finest. And I think it's safe to say one of the finest police departments in the entire nation. I think that the total amount of raises here, various changes in the benefits and so forth, I don't object to that in particular. I don't object to the cumulative 14% in raises because I understand that inflation has increased in recent years. And I think that there are some positive changes here when it comes to adjustments for the probationary officers. All of that makes sense to me. Where I do have an issue is not starting out with the OPEB right at the 2% to match what was the contingent agreement of Local 2748. Effectively, this is a matter of the city leaving money on the table to the tune of something greater than $360,000. If you add up that kind of money compared to what would a 1% increase be in the salary of both Lodge 7 and Local 1651, my ballpark back of the envelope math is that, yeah, that 360,000 over the course of those 2 years where the contribution is less than 2% adds up to about 1% each. So it is just really confusing to me as to why the city wasn't willing to front load some of the raises so that at the end of the day, end of the 3-year period, it winds up coming out to a similar amount, but we don't leave that 360 grand plus there on the table. And in the meantime, that is a tremendous benefit to everyone involved here, that the money is being put away. In fact, because it would be additional contributions by all 3 bargaining units, it would add up to literally millions in additional more dollars going into OPEB so that we have that savings in future years. It's really a benefit for all of the employees to know for certain that that money is being set aside, that money is going to be there when you retire. I used this analogy a few years ago. I know I've done it more than once, so I'm not going to try to go on and repeat myself too much, but the gist being that if you went to your employer and they promised you a guaranteed pension or the like, that, oh yeah, guaranteed pension, don't worry, you don't need to save up anything towards it. I don't need to put in anything towards it in advance. We'll just pay it as we go. Trust me, everything will be fine. You'd probably have some more questions about that. Well, here we have it where there's right now $280 million unfunded in OPEB liabilities. We have something like, what, $4.5 million towards it? It's better than zero, but that's not great. That's incredibly underfunded. And that's even before we get into some of the accounting standards and the like. Double checked. According to the 2022 audit, the number was unfunded for the city at $405 million. It's a change in accounting standards that basically it's how it's projected out, but end of the day, we're talking about hundreds of millions unfunded liability right there. So when I take a look at what happened in the negotiations here, I understand I wasn't there. Negotiations are a bit of a black box, but from what I've pieced together here, it was a matter of the city not being willing to front load in order to get to that 2%. And I think that it would be pretty predictable that the union's position would be that we want to make sure that the members are seeing that nice increase in the paychecks, that bigger increase in that very first year, which, gosh, I could have predicted that a couple of years ago. So I tell you, I am just truly confused by some of the logic here, where we're going as a city. Last year, the city, outside of the collective bargaining process, approved by the city council, an additional holiday, costing to the tune of about $230,000 a year. Now, giving back in concessions that had already been negotiated, that contingency, another 360 grand plus, more or less. It just doesn't add up to me that the city is basically giving away these kinds of funds and then at the same time claiming that we're not having the ability to front load some of these salary increases and the like, when over the long term, it's going to leave everyone in a better position with OPEB. And, well, otherwise, it can be negotiated where it all balances out. Unfortunately, we on the city council were not able to try to renegotiate anything. It's a matter of a straight up or down vote. So this takes me back to where I was a couple of years ago. Every time that union contract ratification comes up, I try to be really clear with my position, try to be very consistent here. I ask a couple of questions. Was this negotiated in good faith? And is this making a significant step in the right direction on OPEB? And then kind of built into that, is this something that the city can afford? So when I look at this here, I cannot understand the logic here. Something is not adding up as to why the city took the approach that it did and is leaving all of this money on the table and is otherwise not truly prioritizing making sure that we have these long-term liabilities taken care of. I can almost understand the short-term needs here, but if there were such short-term dire needs to balance this particular budget at the cost of future budgets, then it doesn't add up to me that we would have significant pay increases in the second and third years and such if it was truly a matter of the city cannot afford these types of increases. So I come back to that standard. I thought that I made it as crystal clear as possible in that meeting, January 30th, 2023. Is this making a significant step in the right direction on OPEB? Back then, I said yes, because we were looking at a 2% increase as of January 1, 2025. Now, we're looking at this increase being phased in over the course of 3 years. And so from a certain perspective, of course, this is making a step in the right direction.
You've
But
got 1 minute, Councilman.
thank you. But unfortunately, I would say that it's a step back from where we were, what we thought we were doing as of a couple of years ago. I simply can't take that step back. And the logic here that the city has presented, it doesn't add up to me. Thank you.
Councilman DeLuise.
Well, Mr. Howe kind of stole my thunder, and I'm not going to talk about numbers or anything like that. We all know the city's in trouble. We're all taxpayers here. But at the end of the day, normal resident, normal taxpayer, at the end of the day, when someone's breaking into your house, who do you call? When your house is on fire, who do you call? So my feeling about, these contracts, I'm in favor of them. And at the end of the day, like Mr. Howe said, the city, for the most part, does a very good job. The streets get taken care of, the trash gets picked up. And, we have fire and police protection. And I think that's what every taxpayer looks forward to. So we all know the city's in trouble, but we have brilliant minds that hopefully can get us out of trouble. I pay taxes, we all pay taxes, but I'm not going to get into numbers like Jeremy. He's very, very intelligent. But Mr. Howe stated it just, the way I was going to say. That's all I have to say right now.
Councilman Napa.
Thank you, Mr. President. Just a caveat, I would like to reiterate what Mr. Howe said, Councilman Howe, sorry. I agree wholeheartedly with his sentiment. A couple of items here. There's a lot of talk about unfunded liabilities and the impact that has on the city's financial health. I think it's important to keep in mind that, yes, unfunded liabilities currently sit at $280 million, give or take, relative to the police department. However, the unfunded liability to that end would only come into true fruition at $280 million if all of that was come to call all at once, which I think we can all agree, the chance of that happening is essentially zero. So net positioning, as far as fiscal health for the city, while it's a good barometer for some instances, is not a good overall barometer of the fiscal health of the city. So I think we can push that aside. That large number scares people often, and I think we need to keep that in perspective as to what that actually means. Now, the police union, the city workers union, the fire department, they all have an obligation to come forward with the city and negotiate in good faith. And I think this contract that the mayor and his staff and the administration and all of the unions have come to, these contracts rather, have been negotiated in very good faith. I think it's unfair that we look back 2 years and say, look what the fire department did, and now we're hamstringing these two unions that are here before us tonight to say, well, you need to follow suit because the fire department did it. I think that's a very poor position to take from the administration standpoint, that they didn't have the opportunity to collectively bargain at that time. So to put them in a position where we're demanding 2% is unfair to them because they didn't have a voice in those initial negotiations. And I commend the administration for saying, okay, we have a 2% goal, similar to what the fire union did. How do we get there? And they've come up with a plan to amortize that over time. Now, I want to keep the council's frame of mind in something that we just did, right? Less than a week ago, we just passed passed a resolution to send it up to the state, and we're amortizing a problem at hand over time. Now, to say that we need to take this problem at hand, that be retiree benefits, and we need a demand solution right now is not consistent with what we've shown in an 8-1 vote, what we think is good for the long-term projections of the city. We've shown in an 8-1 vote, in light of what's going on in the school department, that we think the best course of action forward, and I believe that it is the best course of action forward, to amortize these things over time. And that's the same thing we should be doing with OPEB, which is what you all did. You amortized it over time, gradual increases that will benefit the taxpayers directly. Now, every dollar that the unions put into OPEB, it is a dollar for dollar benefit to the taxpayers, because that's $1 less that the city has to pay towards retiree benefits. Now, the projection here is that at some point, this is going to pay for itself. It's based on market gains. It's going to be managed in the trust based on market performance, assuming relatively conservatively, but also in a position where we can gain, I'd assume, around 5.5%. That was the projection. Now, to say that the new employees coming into the unions are not vested in paying for their own future, I'd assume that most people that are coming to work for the city have long-term aspirations to stay here. We're talking about careers that are lasting 15 to 20 plus years. In the next 15 to 20 plus years, to say that the council can't figure it out to the point where we haven't fully funded OPEB at that point out of the union's pocket for their contributions and what they are looking to do long-term, they've recognized the problem. They came to the table in good faith and they said, okay, we see the problem. It could have been zero. They could have taken a position where, no, we're sorry, fire department, we're not funding anything. But they said, you know what, we recognize the issue. We hear your voices that we need to contribute to our long-term benefits, and they were willing to do that. I think this was a good solution. It was amicable on both sides, and it's a fair solution moving forward. Now, hopefully, like I said, this continues to roll forward in good faith. And as we know how the nature of contracts, it's gradual changes over time. That's the current of good faith negotiation and contracts that are built over years. That's why we don't see massive changes in these contracts. So give the city the opportunity to do exactly what we said we think is the best course of action forward on Wednesday last week. Let's stretch this out over time. Let's make a responsible plan that's responsible on both the city's end fiscally and responsible for our workers that come and give 110% to us every single day, that we could not function without all of you. So I would urge my council members to support both of these contracts and move forward with a favorable action.
So there's a motion made. Is there a second? Seconded by Councilman Foley. But before we go further, is there anyone else who would like to speak on this? Councilman Gebhardt?
Thank you, Council President. Good discussion here so far. I'm not going to repeat what's been said by multiple of my colleagues. For those of us who were here for the last fire contract, I actually rewatched the whole meeting today because it was sent around. There was definite trepidation about going down this path because there were large increases included in that contract, and there was no real guarantee that we would get to where we are today, which is with 2 additional contracts that contain provisions that unlock what we already ratified in the last fire contract. Now, I concur with the frustration that what we are getting is not what we envisioned when we passed that last contract. But I think Councilman Napa well articulated that we cannot put future unions and their members into a situation where the outcome has been pre-negotiated for them, right? That's not how the process works. So ultimately, a third of nothing is nothing. And where we are today is we're getting slightly less out of the gate, give everyone a little bit of time to adjust to making this new contribution into their long-term benefits. We know both of these groups already make substantial contributions to their benefits, and this just adds to it. But it firms up the longevity of the plan. It's an incremental approach to get us to solve what I'm only in my 3rd term here, but since the beginning of my time watching meetings or coming to meetings, the OPEB liability has been the number one thing on the table, and kudos to the mayor and his team for tackling it in a meaningful way and bringing these contracts to us. Are they perfect? No. Do they move us in the right direction? Yes. So for that reason, I will be voting yes tonight. Thank you.
Any other members of the council wish to speak? Councilman Muto?
Thank you. I'll be brief. Change is hard, and we had a big challenge in front of us prior to myself and a few others joining the council. But I feel we've actually made a significant step by setting this up. The mechanisms are being established with all the contracts. I am a believer that the agreements were and the contracts were negotiated in good faith. However, I am concerned, and as a union household of a teacher, by agreements not being properly funded and kicked down the road, you're 20 to 25 years in your profession, and then you get the rug pulled out from under you. So I will raise this caution. I appreciate the good faith effort. I appreciate all the good work that police, fire, and the municipal unions do. And I appreciate the mechanisms and the hard work that was done over the last several years. I will just challenge over the next several years that 2% on the OPEC will not make it. The assumptions are based on an 8% and a 5.75% compounded interest rate. That's going to leave us significantly short in the future. And well past my retirement, it's going to be time to pay for your benefits. And what will happen then? So I'm raising the cautionary flag right now that going forward, please think about structuring your future contracts to increase your contributions, because it is your benefit, not mine. And speaking from experience with contracts and benefits not being funded properly, it sucks. All right. So I will be voting for this contract with the expectation that we will be looking at the structure of OPEC going forward. Thank you.
Do any other members of the council wish to speak? All right, so I don't have any reason to restate the obvious and what's already been stated repeatedly. I'll just point out we're tasked with simply ratification of the contracts. We're not involved in negotiation. So our role here is rather narrow. A no vote would send us most likely to arbitration, which, as those who know, Rhode Island arbitration favors unions. Not that I'm opposed to that. In fact, I'm rather on board with it. So this isn't really much of a decision for us, for better or worse. I agree that the change as we're seeing is good. It's incremental, but for those who know how collective bargaining works, it has to be incremental. You don't really have another option unless the other side just wants to give away the farm, which shouldn't happen and doesn't now that we have a very different administration than we did a decade ago. Decade? 2 decades? I'm old. It's starting to blend together. The point is that the agreement is a good one. It's better than what we had. And no one can really argue at least those two very succinct basic points. And no one can argue either that the police definitely deserve everything they get and then some. So I'm all in favor, and the clerk will call the roll on the motion for favorable action. Yes.
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 Yes. No.
Yes.
No.
All right. Next, we have PCR 18-25, resolution ratifying the collective bargaining agreement between the City of Warwick and Council 94, Local 1651 for the period of July 1st, 2024 through June 30th, 2027. Councilman Lattice for the report from Finance.
The Finance Committee moved to the council floor without a recommendation.
All right, and now bear in mind, we'll be having public comment first because we weren't able to conclude it properly during committee. So do we have a motion to open the floor for public comment?
Make a motion to open for public comment.
Motion made and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? All right, so public comment will follow the same rules it always does. So no surprises here. Any members of the public have anything they wish to add? All right, seeing none, do we have a motion to close public comment?
Motion to close.
Motion made to close public comment, seconded by almost everyone. All in favor? All opposed? All right, public comment's now closed. So now, council, do your usual thing. Councilman Ricks.
Thank you. First, I just have to respectfully disagree with some of my colleagues and characterization that OPEB is being amortized. There is no amortization happening here. None. The unfunded liability, $289 million as it currently stands under those particular accounting standards, that's just growing. The city is doing a pay-as-you-go model with very, very little contribution, such that the balance, except for the change in accounting standards and some of the actuarial projections and the like, on average, the balance goes up and up and up every year, not down. The payments are going towards it. As of right now, before the ratification of this contract, those annual contributions are quite small in comparison to the amount that it goes up on average every single year. Eventually, if you have something that just continues to go up at that escalating rate, it gets to a point where we can't just continue to pay for it as we go. As right now, we've been paying for the benefit as we go. But between healthcare inflation, simply having very, very little in that OPEB trust account, so we're not taking advantage of compound interest, quite the opposite. Between all of that and then, well, all of these healthcare inflation and the fact that every single year and quite a while into the future too, we continue to have a greater ratios of retirees compared to active employees paying in. It was, what was it, a half dozen years ago when we switched from having more active employees than retirees to more retirees than active employees, and that ratio keeps growing. So when you hear that analogy about Social Security and the like, that applies similar logic here at the city level, except we don't have a $1 trillion+ trust fund like Social Security does. We have a bit over $4 million in the bank to cover a currently $289 million unfunded liability. I'll also just add that the pensions aren't fully funded. We used to be on a 40-year plan to fund the original Fire Police 1 pension. We switched away from that. We're no longer amortizing that as we are either. Like I was saying earlier, a dollar is a dollar. You look at all of these unfunded liabilities together, major school bond coming up, put all of those together, look at how much the city is going to have to pay out every single year in these coming years. I tell you, the math looks incredibly bad. I hope that the city can turn this around. I really do. In the past, I made motions and voted to support tax increases when 0% tax increases were being proposed. I made motions to increase taxes when smaller tax increases were being opposed. Because I see this as a problem where we need shared sacrifice. Taxes are going to have to go up. And employees are going to have to make contributions into this as well to make sure that those benefits are actually there when you turn and it's time to use them. So I'm not afraid of taking the hard votes when it comes to this. If we don't all make some serious sacrifices to make sure this all works, well, it's just not going to be there. The rate of progress that I'm seeing, this scaling back of the progress that it looked like we were going to be able to negotiate. And again, it just doesn't make any sense to me that the city wasn't able to come up with that offer to make sure that we were taking all of the money on the table. It's a win-win for everyone that the city would be putting away more money into making sure that we can pay for these benefits. So if I'm frustrated tonight, it's because I feel like we're all sitting here applauding that something good is happening, that raises are coming, and that the benefits are going to be there. But what I'm foreseeing here is that unless things seriously change very quickly, in fact, for all I know, perhaps it's already too late. I'm not a financial expert, but I try to listen to the financial experts, and they were telling us before I got on this city council, this is my 9th year on the city council, I'm listening to the old reports where they were telling us that we were past the point of no return before I even got elected for the first time. When I'm hearing all of that, and when I see the continuing dire numbers and all of these trends, if I was a city employee, I would not count on the pension, at least the pension at these certain rates that are guaranteed in the contract. I would not count on lifetime health insurance being there either. We saw what happened in Central Falls. What was it in Central Falls? They're getting 30 cents on the dollar on their pension because they ran out of money. My God, I don't like to talk about these things and doomsday stuff, obviously. For the next few years, I'm sure everything will look fine. The budgets will be more or less balanced. But there's going to come a point, I don't know precisely when, but my fear is that it's not too far off that those numbers that the city has to pay out every single year, there's going to be maximum tax increases, and those just aren't going to be enough to cover the difference. And then the general fund balance starts to shrink. We had a few very good years of reprieve here between tens of millions of dollars in federal ARPA funds coming in, as well as other reasons why we had a very good run of a few years right there. But the general trends are going to catch up to us because we're not making those major structural changes to make sure that all of this is actually funded. So I would just seriously caution, I want all of the benefits promised to be there when each and every one of you retires. Sitting here in this chair in good faith, I cannot make you that promise. And for that reason, I'm not going to sign my name onto a contract that makes promises if I personally, after doing my due diligence and looking at these numbers, trying to listen to the experts, if I'm not convinced that we can actually pay for the work that you're doing now and the benefits that the city is promising to you in the future at the time of your retirement. Thank you.
Thank you. I have a question for Chief of Staff Senti.
Bill Facenti, Chief of Staff.
Always a pleasure to talk to you, sir.
And you as well.
I have a question because a few days ago I put a request in for information because I was hearing things and I just wanted clarification. I'd like you to answer this on the record. This lifetime health care that I keep hearing about, my understanding based on something I received in writing is that no new employees get lifetime health care. Is that correct?
That's not true.
We don't get lifetime health care. We switch to Medicare.
Can
at
you speak? I don't know why.
We switch to Medicare at 65, so we won't get lifetime medical.
And is that paid for by the city?
We get a supplement, and then the rest is paid by the employee.
Louder.
We get a supplement, and the rest is paid by the employee.
Okay, so the supplement is the Plan B, what would be
Yeah, right.
considered Plan B?
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Any other members of the council wish to speak on this matter? Councilman Lattiser.
Thank you, Council President. So to clarify on Councilman Foley's question, when an employee retires, whether it be at age 40 or at age 60, they get lifetime health care until they turn 65. Then it goes to Medicare. It had changed 2012-ish or so, I forget the exact date, to only cover the employee with lifetime health care. So they do get lifetime health care. This OPEB thing, this is a pie in the sky. It's wishful thinking. It's hoping that it's going to be the save all of the financial crash, if you will. It's going to be the cure all of the bleeding that is taking place. Well, maybe some people are right, but I don't believe so. If the cure for this ongoing out of control expense in perpetuity is going to be controlled, or at least drastically reduced to affordable level for the taxpayers, then you have to increase the copays. You have to increase the cap on prescription drugs. You have to eliminate lifetime health care for new hires, and you have to put in a copay on retirees. Anything other than that, I will not be supporting. Thank you.
Any other members of the council? Councilman Gephardt.
Thank you, Council President. This is for the Chief of Staff. This is a little in the weeds, so I apologize. But I was reflecting back on my notes from the last time we went through this contract. So Article 14 established this Employee Productivity and Efficiency Committee. How many times did that meet this past year?
Can you repeat that question?
Article 14 in the
Never mind. Hold on.
So that is has been in the contract. I've been here for 5 years. And I did some research on it. Somebody asked this question a while ago. I don't have any record of that committee meeting. It may have met when it was first put in, but not in the last 5 years. And I can't find a record committee. If there were no notes on it, my predecessors. So I don't think it's met certainly not for more than 5 years.
Just an observation, this kind of would have been a good opportunity if there was no intention of continuing with it, that it could be maybe struck out of the contract, or given that it exists here and obviously had genesis in some bright idea, might be a good idea for this to meet and potentially work on matters relating to efficiency. All right. The second one is just an observation. In Thank you. Thank you, Chief. I think we're good. The second one is as we were getting ready for this, I was just reflecting on the last time we had the city's financial planner here in the presentation, and Councilman Ricks cited a number from that where it was described to us that, you know, in order to sort of fully cover an individual's healthcare, OPEB healthcare costs in the future, that 8% sort of from the beginning and throughout would be required to meet those costs. Also in that financial presentation. So the way I look at these contracts is we said we were going to move forward with creating a structure to start reserving monies for OPEB. We had a financial plan from our financial planner that involved creating the trust, funding it with some monies. And there were 4 recommendations in that plan in terms of making this a sustainable and workable solution. One was, you know, redirecting monies that are currently allocated to pensions that may be transitioning out or funded at suitable levels. That would allow us to make, you know, some more significant contributions to this plan that would sort of get the ball rolling on accumulating interest and building up that fund. 2 was employee contributions. 3 was one-time monies, like we got back a credit from our health insurance several years back, and one of the suggestions was, you know, to dump that $4 million or whatever into the account. So just while we're talking about this, because if you just look at the 2%, and especially the 0.66% and 0.67 and up to 2 in a couple of years, it's, you know, there aren't numbers that are going to wow you, because this isn't meant to be a one-time cure-all pie in the sky fix to all of our problems, right? This is an incremental approach. So can you just talk about other ways that you envision? Because I heard Mr. Kaiser talk about, you know, that the only funds that would go into this account would be that 2%, you know, kick in from the employee paychecks, but that doesn't seem like it would be sufficient in the long term. So did I mishear that? Are there plans to, you know, fund this in other ways in partnership with, you know, with the guidance of our financial advisor in the future? So I'll leave that to you.
Yeah, you are correct in that Joe Newton, our actuary, had given us several different options, and 8% was his determination, as Councilman Ricks had indicated, was necessary to make a based on expectations of growth in the assets to address the problem. We have to start somewhere. A seed has been planted at 2%, which will be there in 3 years. We'll have another round of negotiations. We'll have new actuarial reports. The growing number of employees, well, as mentioned on the non-union side, anyone hired after 2012 is not eligible for retiree health benefits at all. Obviously, that had substantial, or it does have benefit with respect to our long-time liabilities. Going forward, municipal and public safety employees hired after a certain date are only eligible for individual plans. That had an effect on the accrued liability. So these other steps have already been taken. The 2% is planted a seed. Future negotiations will allow us additional opportunities to address our overall liability.
And then on the city side, as some of these other plans retire, would it still, are we still thinking that it would be the intention to redirect, you know, some of those monies into this account to shore up the long term?
With changes in pension arcs, potentially, that may be an option. As indicated earlier, you know, we see the employee OPEB contribution negotiated these contracts as way of as a cost avoidance to enable the city to direct its resources to other needs within the city, as opposed to using general fund dollars for the OPEB support.
Okay. All All right. The only other thing that felt a little murky is it was brought up a few times that, you know, there was 400 million liability, and then there was some magic, and then it went to 250 or 295 or whatever the number is today. So can you just explain, because I think this is a function of the discount rate in the calculation. Can you just are you prepared to explain that? No.
No.
Okay.
No. Quite candidly, no. That's an actuary. Yeah, his reasoning behind that, and obviously it's looking at the overall state of the economy, what the expectations are on interest rates and stock market.
Got it. All right. I think I'm okay for now. Thank you.
Favorable action.
Do any members of the council wish to add? Councilman Lattice, or you have? Yep. All right, you're good.
Okay, thank you. I want to follow up on a question that Councilman Gebhardt asked. I actually had it highlighted here in my binder and just got distracted from it. The question is Article 14, and it was stated that the city has not acted on this particular contractual requirement ever, apparently. Does that mean that the city is in violation of this contract by never acting, never forming this committee that is required contractually?
So I just want to clarify. I don't know that.
I'm sorry, I can't hear you.
Let me just clarify. I couldn't find it. I don't know that it was never formed, but by not forming a committee, we're not in violation. If the union felt we were in violation, they would file a grievance. But the committee is enabling, if you will. And if the parties form it, then they form it. And if they don't, then they don't. But if they don't, it's not a contractual violation. But I'm not sure that it was never met, Councilman. I just can say that I asked some of my colleagues. I looked from when I was here. I looked at some of my predecessors' notes. I don't see it. I'd be surprised if it would never met, but I just can't see the when.
Well, it requires 4 members designated by the city. So we have several people here from the city. Do they know who, if or when these 4 members were appointed?
Union president wants to respond.
Close.
All right. Jason Wendelowski, 1651 president. I can speak on the Article 14. We're in the process. All right. Here we go. All right. Article 14, the committee that you're stating, we were in the process of working on it with union officials at the time. We had an election. We had a change in officials. So we're back to working on it once again, along with the city, to bring on 4 members of each side to create a efficiency.
When, excuse me, when was Article 14, when did it become part of the contract?
I believe it was probably 2 contracts ago. It would be under Mayor Solomon.
So it could have been 6 years ago?
Somewhere around there. Yeah.
And as of today, there is no committee?
No.
Okay.
We're still working on it.
Okay.
We just had some, working on the contract for the last, pretty much the last 10 months, almost to a year. This has been hard fought and worked in good faith. We had our contract as well as the FOP. So there was some constraints at the time.
Okay. All right. Thank you for that.
You're welcome.
Last question from Mr. Kaiser. Hasn't our actuaries presented a number to us, not just once, but probably several times, for what the required contribution will be from the city to properly fund this OPEB plan?
Well, it was mentioned it was 8% to.
But we haven't been
Provide
funding
the
it, right? The city hasn't been funding it, period. Just recently, we put in $500,000, right, through
No,
Councilman Ricks.
we've put in approximately $3.5 million, $4 million, is to say.
When?
22 and 23, there were $500,000 appropriations in the general fund budget.
Okay.
For OPEB contributions, and then we transferred a healthcare reserve, of which at one time there was approximately $7 million.
You took that money from the healthcare reserve to put it in OPEB?
Yes.
Interesting.
Well, it was for healthcare purposes.
Mm-hmm. And if I remember correctly, the number that was presented to us by our actuaries, who they are the experts in the numbers, and supposedly this is what we're paying for. The number was significantly higher, in the millions per year, higher than what we can tax. I believe if you look into that, that's what you're going to see. It's higher than what we can tax. So that's, I'm done with this OPEB thing. Thank you.
Any other members of the council wish to speak on this matter? All right, I'll do my fun last word then. So, it irks me every time this happens, and eventually I lose my patience with it. So I'm just gonna do the diatribe now. OPEB, pay-as-you-go, is a viable, accepted method of funding OPEB benefits. Look it up if you don't believe me. In fact, one state used to mandate use of pay-as-you-go. I don't think they mandate it anymore, but they used to. So the claim that it is not a viable method is false, factually inaccurate. Now, an accurate claim is that it provides less stability than pre-funding OPEB benefits. That is absolutely true, and to say contrary would be a lie. So the argument isn't a zero-sum game, as often seems to be suggested, or at least implied. The argument is simply, which one do you prefer? However, we no longer are in that boat. We are now moving towards pre-funding, which is what many people have argued for many years. This provides for more financial stability, less unexpected large expenditures if more people all of a sudden are injured or retire all at once. This is a good thing. As correctly pointed out by the administration, you can only do incremental change. If you tried to do 8% all at once, as far as collective bargaining negotiations go, it is a give and a take. If they give 8% all at once, they also get to take something. That means you would have to, let's say, give them even more health benefits or more pay. And I would, I think I could safely guess that people don't want to do that right now. So take your incremental benefits and be thankful. This is a good thing. Good thing. Incremental benefits are how collective bargaining agreements work. It's a fact. Ask Councilman Foley. He used to help negotiate them and deal with this crap. Okay? This is how they work. The city didn't used to try to do this. Now they are. Again, this is a good thing. You can argue you wish it was done a different way. Sure. But you can't argue they should have went right to 8% because that's not practical. It's not possible. So, to recap, the move to pre-funding OPEB is factually a good thing for the purposes of long-term financial stability. OPEB, pay-as-you-go, remains a viable method, and for now, we are somewhat a hybrid as the pre-funding takes effect more and more, and as the administration stated, they plan on hopefully increasing it as contracts go on, because again, incremental. I know school committee member Testa is very fond of the phrase, don't let the perfect be the enemy of the good. this isn't perfect, but it's damn near close as far as to what you can do with a collective bargaining agreement. So to sling mud at it and to suggest otherwise when the facts strongly disagree with you, I think is not appropriate, we'll say. Clerk will call the roll. Yes.
Yes.
Yes. Yes.
Yes. No.
Yes.
No.
Please take your conversations outside. We have one more item left. PCR 19-25, resolution ratifying the memorandum of agreement between the City of Warwick and Local 2748 International Association of Firefighters, AFL-CIO, relative to Employees Benefits Trust Fund. Councilman Lattiser for the Finance Committee's report.
The Finance Committee recommended to move to the floor without a recommendation.
All right, and to recap for those who weren't with us earlier, public comment was not received on this yet, and no presentation occurred yet. So first, we'll do the presentation, then we'll do public comment, assuming it's the council's wishes. Then we'll close public comment, again, assuming it's the council's wishes, and then we'll go to the council. So first, administration.
Good evening, Bill Facenti, Chief of Staff to Mayor Picozzi. This is a memorandum of agreement between the City of Warwick and Local 2748 International Association of Firefighters, AFL-CIO. As it's been mentioned numerous times, the collective bargaining agreement between the city and the fire union called for a 2% OPEB with each of the other unions, municipal and FOP, to also contribute 2%. To piggyback on Councilman Nappa's comments, at the time, the fire department firefighters were not privy to what the negotiations would be for tonight, as the Council 94 and FOP were not privy to the negotiations back in 2022. The MOA reduces the 2% OPEB deduction on the firefighters beginning on January 1st, 2025, to match the other two unions to 0.66% beginning on January 1st, 2025 for parity and equity. I move favorable action, or request favorable action. I don't move it.
Oh, I just realized who's left. Does any members of the public have any comments or questions? Well, sorry. Can the council, anybody want to open it up for a public comment? Councilman Gebhardt, do we have a second? Councilman Nappa, all in favor?
Aye. Aye.
All opposed? All right. Any members of the public have any comments or questions on the resolution before us? Okay. Do we have a motion to close public comment? Motion by Councilman Nappa. Do we have a second? Second by Councilman Ricks. All in favor?
Aye. Aye.
All opposed? All right. So now this is before the full council. Any takers? Councilman Ricks.
It being the situation that the city council has voted to ratify the previous two collective bargaining agreements that were before us this evening, it makes perfect sense for us to move forward with favorable action on this item to make sure that the OPEB contributions at the rates specified in those two collective bargaining agreements actually take effect as to all three collective bargaining units, the unions, that is. Thank you.
I expressed earlier, my support for the two contracts that we just passed, but this one is particularly frustrating though, because when we heard the contract, we made our concessions based on an expectation of what we would get from this contract. The two we just passed substantially watered down what we are getting out of this. I'd love to vote no, but given that we need the three of these to advance the package as a whole, I'll count votes first. Thank you.
Any members of the council wish to speak? Seeing none, we go to Councilman Knapp. Motion made, second by Councilman Foley. Any further comments or questions? Seeing none, clerk call the roll.
Mr. Sinapi?
Yes.
Mr. DeLuise? Mr. Foley?
Yes.
No.
Mr. Kirby? Mr. Lattiser?
Yes.
Mr. Nuno? Mr. Napa?
Yes.
Mr. Reyes?
Yes.
Aye.
Pass.
I have one. It's a resolution. The title is authorizing a telecommunications lease at 150 Draper Avenue with Tower Co. 2013 LLC and Cellco Partnership DBA Verizon Wireless.
Public Properties. Ward 6. Ward 7. Ward 9. And then I have one resolution requesting the Rhode Island General Assembly enact legislation to support municipal work and reimbursement. Intergovernmental. And we stand adjourned. Gavel, gavel.